This is the Analysis in Chains with Nathan Williams and Neal Kieran.
Welcome to Analysis in Chains by CryptoNews.com, your daily source of all things crypto. Hi, Neal. How's everything going with the family?
All's good. Not much sleep over here. So if I pass out and start falling asleep during this episode, my apologies.
Last summer was crazy, absolutely crazy for ICOs, Neal. And it's almost been a year since we got started in this podcast. And I remember our first days when everyone was drooling over ICOs. I think it's probably good to sort of stop and take stock, take a look at where the ICO market has come and what the trends are nowadays.
Things have really changed, I would say, in the last year. I remember a year ago looking at all these different ICOs. Everything seemed unprofessional. It was quite raw. You really did not know who was who. Whereas these days, ICO web pages are more polished. You have a better idea of who these advisors are because you've seen them in various, say, interviews on TV or discussed in CoinDesk or whatever other news source you have. And so we know a lot more. But back then it was very raw, very exciting. And what was happening was that as soon as an ICO finished, and in the majority of cases, and if it was listed in CoinMarketCap, it would just shot up. It went up like 50% the following day. And basically it was raining money nearly every day. It was amazing. And then, but things have changed a lot since then. And if you're to do an ICO today, it seems to be easier to raise money, but the return is not as good as it was a year ago.
It's funny, when I talk to people who are in the market now, I get sort of mixed results. You know, I've met a lot of people who have done their ICO in the past 6 months. The first 2 months of this year were actually bigger than last year, even though the coin prices fell. What I noticed is that a lot of really good projects had more difficulty raising their hard cap. Yesterday, I actually had a talk with someone from Fractal. They're running KYC AML for various ICO projects. And one of the guys there was saying, yeah, people are still going at it with anywhere from 20 million to 100 million ICOs, and they're reaching their hard cap. It's probably a little different than it was a year ago, but the possibility has not died out at all.
Interestingly, if we were to look at the stats, and there's different sources out there for stats, the ones I often refer to are isostats.com or coinschedule.com, and even CoinDesk has its own stats and ICOs. And what we're seeing is that while 2018 has already surpassed 2017 in number of ICOs and amount raised, what we're seeing is that June is probably set to be the lowest month of the year in terms of money raised for ICOs. It seems to be a diminishing amount over time. Now, there are possibly various reasons for that. First of all, people invest in ICOs, they maybe will be investing with Ether or Bitcoin. And because Bitcoin Ether was much cheaper, much more expensive, say in February and March, therefore it looked as if ICOs were raising more. But maybe like one Ether you could give in, say, in February, January would have been like $1,000, and now it's $500. So maybe that's one reason why there seems to be less going into ICOs according to all of these different stats. But I think that the bubble has deflated, all the enthusiasm has gone down, and when I was reading a lot of these Bloomberg articles as to the big crypto rush that was going on, it was saying that, okay, if you were to invest into an ICO, if you were to buy equity, buy tokens into an ICO, the chances of getting return immediately was extremely high, as opposed to, say, investing in Uber. You could buy equity in Uber today and maybe it's going to increase in value, but actually liquidating your assets is very difficult. Whereas with an ICO, you could buy into an ICO in like in a pre-sale and then liquidate nearly immediately and get a very good return. But what we're seeing now is that that's less guaranteed, and now we possibly could be seeing less money going into ICOs, and that could be the other reason. But I'm sure there are good projects will still get money. It's just that I think there's less money thrown around willy-nilly.
And what this may be indicative of is a maturing of the market, right? I mean, last summer, 90% of the projects out there were thrown up in haste. Whereas this spring, I was looking at a couple of different ICO projects that seem to have decent backing. Even one of my competitors actually, I was doing an ICO and it looked, halfway decent. And check back a couple months later, they had stopped the idea of the ICO already, all completely, and took down their white paper because I think it's more challenging now than it was last summer. It's not that it's impossible, it's that it takes a lot more work. And I think also not just on the investor side, but on the entrepreneur's side, there's a bit more caution now because you have had regulatory judgments and no one wants to end up in jail for doing things wrong. So even though there's a lot of hype, and even though people are still really interested in blockchain and crypto and the greatest new project, a lot more thought has to go into it and a lot more vetting. And that could just explain the slowdown, but also why we're still getting stories of people saying, yeah, 20 million, 30 million, 50 million, 100 million, no big deal, it still happens.
Well, the thing is, barriers to entry are definitely growing compared to a year ago. It means that you need more money to hire lawyers, to hire other competent people to help you, get through the minefield of different regulations in different countries. Whereas a year ago, that was not the case. You could just fork off whatever coin was out there and say, hey, I have my own coin. I can remember there was like Solar Coin and Trump Coin, and they were top 100 coins back then. And weren't really doing much and still don't do much. But that was the landscape back then. But I think you're right. It is a sign of maturity that what we have now is that higher barriers to entry, people have to be a lot more competent, a lot more effort is required. But the thing is, this is no different to the actual startup space. Many startups raise millions of dollars. So if anything, it's kind of like, I would say that becoming more like the average startup. Again, that's down to maturity as opposed to this wild west company that would just say anything and there was no legal implications. And if they failed, they failed. Whereas today, no, it's more of a case of, your token could be a security and therefore you could be liable. And so people really have to, do the effort to make sure that they're in compliance with various local regulations.
Did you get any Trump coin?
I didn't know. I still
I
out
have
there.
one Obama coin.
I think that was just a sign the times was that you had so many coins just done for fun. Even like Dogecoin was done at the time, but Dogecoin's actually grown in popularity and its community is extremely strong, and its value has increased. And in some of them, I guess the communities weren't so strong and they end up dying off. But because back then forking was the way of making a coin, or just having a coin through Ethereum was the way you do it. But now things have become a lot more evolved. Now you have to ask yourself, what's the likelihood of this project actually having a test net, having a mainnet? And now we're wondering, okay, which one of these will actually have their own blockchain? Because just using Ethereum to develop a service, I don't think is really good enough anymore. I think you really have to have your own blockchain now to be seen as a truly blockchain company that has potential to, to change the world or change,
Really?
industries. Well, because the thing is that if everyone,
I don't know, Neil. I'm pretty sure that most of the really interesting projects going forward are not going to have their own blockchain. I mean, don't get me wrong. There is a big fight right now over core protocols. You know, you got EOS in there. You got Ethereum still trying to keep its ground. You have, Bitcoin has been there forever, and you have a bunch of new ones coming up, and some old established ones. But they're all fighting for the base protocol. But the interesting projects, I think, are going to be the second generation ones, the ones where you have sort of specialized protocols or specialized tokens or specialized services that end up being decentralized but are too niche to have their own protocol. I mean, I just keep thinking of things like MindSpider, but think of anything else like music protocols or data registries or anything like that. There's no way you can incentivize individuals to run their own blockchain on that sort of thing. But
Well,
everyone knows that that's going to be sort of the future, the second generation, third generation blockchain stuff.
in terms of digital assets, yes, I completely agree with you. Like non-fungible tokens, like we see for CryptoKitties or EtherBots, whatever, like
Hmm.
these have huge potential for new business models. But if I were to invest right now, I would prefer to invest in something that has its own blockchain because platforms generally will have the most demand going forward because they'll be used a lot more. They'll have like if you look at Ethereum right now and all of the different programs, all of the different companies based in Ethereum. Now you have Waves trying to do the same. Cardano is trying to have its own ICOs in the future. Stellar is running a few ICOs. It's like those type of blockchains and platforms I think will be the future and will be the top 10 in the future. But then the likes of um, companies that just use non-fungible tokens, like maybe ERC-721 or ERC-20, like we wouldn't see those on CoinMarketCap, but you're right, they do have huge potential as companies in themselves. It's just a case of, would you buy, like if you really like the company that did CryptoKitties, how can you invest in that company without actually buying a CryptoKitty? There is no other way of investing in it unless you're actually a private equity or you're in venture capitalism. So as
Yeah, but
a
I mean, forgetting the 721 tokens. I mean, thinking just in terms of various supply chain protocols. This is the one I always go to, or other protocols where you have copyright tracking for digital assets or anything that ends up being sort of beyond the base protocol. I look at the like making your own blockchain as sort of like making your own computer chip. If you're going to invent Uber or Airbnb for blockchain, you're not going to necessarily want to build your own computer chip to do it.
I totally agree with what you're saying, but if I were to invest, I'm just saying that I would rather invest in a platform or in a company that has its own blockchain because and assuming that they're going to be very good at attracting various communities and networks to that blockchain because the more it's used then the more value it will have.
Hmm.
That's the way I see it going forward, and that's what I'll be watching. But the thing is, as I said, like digital assets is the future, and whoever transacts in these, like you don't have to have an ICO to be involved in non-fungible tokens and digital assets, and you can still be a private run company held by private equity and venture capitalists and still be worth billions of dollars.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
but in terms of like coin market cap, and if I'm going to be buying tokens, I'll be more focusing on people looking to build their own blockchain if I want to get a good ROI.
It's funny. I'm so the opposite. I look at the companies that are building their own blockchains, and I'm very skeptical right now because, well, it's just because I'm seeing the way they're doing it, and it's not that they're bad. It's that I'm skeptical about their ability to make it happen because there's a lot of, first of all, hype around it, and the way that they're attracting new projects to build on them is by offering grants of $500,000 or whatever, and they got to vet these things. But anyone who builds on them is taking a gamble as well because you don't know which one is going to win. Someone's going to win and someone's going to lose, but the question is there going to be one winner? Is it going to end up being like the internet where you have a monopoly of one protocol? that's really unknown. And so it ends up being a huge risk for anyone building on top of, say, EOS or Ethereum or Stellar or any of these others. And so I don't know. I guess coming from the other side, I just sort of see how fierce the fighting is, and going, well, if the fighting is this fierce, does this mean that the risk has increased tenfold by by the ones that are married to one blockchain,
Yeah,
their own
no,
blockchain?
I totally agree. It is very hard to judge if someone can be successful in implementing the blockchain that they're describing or selling in the ICO. And there's not enough blockchain experts in the world to make sure that every company that says they want to do blockchain can actually make one. Um, but it is interesting to see some companies who have had ICOs that they will not make their own blockchain, but will be dependent on other blockchains like Stellar or Cardano. And some of them have said, okay, well, we can't, like Ethereum can't do everything we want, so we're going to be using two blockchains in order to develop the business model regarding our ICO. So I think that's going to be very interesting. It means that you could have maybe 4 or 5 main platforms in the future, but as you said, like it's going to be a fight to the death to determine who these 4 to 5 will be.
The Wild West isn't over, and even as the industry matures, there's still a lot of uncertainty and around these protocols and what's going to be the best way forward.
I agree.